Good morning, everybody, and you're more than welcome to this second in MyMind's webinar series of health and well-being to support people with the challenges of dealing with COVID-19. I'm very pleased that so many of you have been able to join us this morning, and welcome back to anybody who joined us last week when James dealt with the challenges of working from home and maintaining a good work-life balance during COVID-19. My name is Gráinne O'Rourke and I'm Head of Communications with MyMind, and I'm delighted to be involved in this series of webinars. Just a couple of housekeeping issues before we get started. So first and foremost, because of the platform we're using, there might be a slight delay from time to time between the picture and the sound. So please do bear with us. It is outside of our control, part of the technology. The second thing is that the event is being recorded, and in the next couple of days I will be putting it up on our YouTube channel. So if you want to look back, because Annalisa is going to do some really interesting and useful exercises, or if you want to share the link with any of your friends or colleagues, assuming that you find it helpful today, which of course we hope that you will. The recording of last week's webinar is already live on our YouTube channel for anybody that wants to visit mymind.org and just look for our YouTube channel. You'll see the video there. So Annalisa is one of MyMind's therapists and has been with the organisation for a number of years. She is going to talk today about the challenges that we're all facing in dealing with worry and fear during the COVID-19 pandemic. At the end of Annalisa's presentation, we will have a short question and answer session. You will see that you have a question section on your screen where you can type in a question. So please don't be shy and do feel free to engage with us as we go through the presentation this morning. So without any further delay, I'd like to introduce you to Annalisa, who's going to talk to us this morning about managing worry and fear. Thank you, Anna.
Hi, good morning, Gráinne. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. As Gráinne mentioned, we're going to talk about worry and fear, and we hope that information we give you, you'll find it useful. Just to introduce quickly myself, I've been with MyMind for over 2 years. I've qualified in cognitive behavioral therapy. That's an area I specialize in. I did a BA in counseling and psychotherapy, and my previous background was also in psychology. I do provide a service in different languages, English, Italian and Spanish, and so I'm used to deal with a lot of different culture and backgrounds. So let's get started with our topics for today. So the main discussion points that we're gonna go through are what is worry and fear? How does that link to anxiety? How can we manage these situations? We're going to go through some examples, and I'll do a couple of exercises with you, and we're going to have hopefully you know, enough time to answer all your questions. And please feel free to you know, ask anything you feel that's relevant to you. So what is worry? It's an apprehension over some events that are happening in the future. We always feel an emotion attached to it, and this emotion is also assigned to certain stimuli in our body, or if you want to call them physical symptoms, physical reactions. So what happens when we are presented with this with the symptoms, with the stimuli, we often look for some defense mechanism to protect ourselves from this feeling and from negative thoughts. And in most cases, we try to avoid them. We try to run away. Something that occurred to me that people, often use the word worry and fear interchangeably. So, and something to point out is that fear is normally led by an involuntary thought or an involuntary feeling. Say a tiger is approaching you, you have learned to fear a tiger and you react to that immediately. A worry is more a voluntary thought or feeling. So it's almost as we were feeding ourselves that worry, if we were creating that worry ourselves. So just to be clear about the difference between the two, we said it's an immediate event and our body prepares for a fight or flight response. You might have heard this expression. So our body has learned to either fight the emotion or just run away. So I suppose we need to find a way to deal with it. It's always experienced on a number of adaptive or maladaptive, and very often are maladaptive reaction that we have learned and we continue to experience. Both worry and fear can lead you to experience anxiety. Anxiety is described as an emotional reaction, a physiological response, which means you might have present some physical symptoms attached to it, and he always refers to known, but very often to unknown causes as well. And so everything that you don't know about, that it's unknown to you, that you never experienced, that can make you feel that way. And this reaction can range really from a normal reaction, and a reaction that can really cause a dysfunction, can affect your decision making, your quality of life, or even impairing your function, impairing the quality of life for some people. But what is affecting this response that we get? So the social environment is definitely something that is affecting it. Thinking of, for example, of the pandemic, the situation we are nowadays, is something that is a threat and is outside our control, is in the environment, but is definitely affecting our response to react to things. It could be some life events that you might have experienced, a trauma, something you experienced in the past, some life stressors in work, and of course in the pandemic, we are exposed to a lot of these life stresses more than we normally are. We are exposed to different situations, working from home, using different technology. Another thing that might affect our response is our personality. So we react to specific events in different ways, depending on your personality. And many of us would react in a negative effect. Some of the cognitive factors would include the risk assessment. So how do you actually rate the risk? Are you rating it very high? Are you spending a lot of time trying to rate the risk, or the risk associated to those events? So you would experience, a lot of thoughts would go through your mind about that. There could be some underlying beliefs that you have followed, belief and values, and that you are maintaining, and perhaps you have found some safety behaviors that help you cope with the situation. So there are a lot of different things that can affect your response. It could be a combination of all of them. So just to bear in mind, all the things around us, part of our personalities, but also all the things in the environment that can affect us. Just something that I'd like to point out, we need some anxiety. Anxiety, I always say to all my clients, anxiety is healthy to a certain extent. A moderate level can improve our performance. It increases our attention, our interest. If we weren't feeling a bit of anxiety, we wouldn't get out of bed in the morning to turn on our computer and start working. We wouldn't do a lot of things. So experiencing a bit of anxiety can make you react, can make you do things. So it's when the levels get too high that it can actually have a negative impact on it. How can we manage it? So let's think about ways of what we could do to manage our worry, our fears, our anxiety. So I just presented a couple of interventions here from a therapeutic point of view, but bear in mind that you don't necessarily need to go to a therapist to go through this intervention. You can intervene yourself. You might decide to go to a therapist to get some guidelines. The therapist might help you to gain the skills to intervene yourself in the situation. So let's have a look from a psychoanalytical point of view, for example. There might be some sources of conflict within yourself. There might be some unconscious conflict. How do you recognize them? Very often, try to pay attention to notice your impulses. Is there anything that I'm doing by impulse? For example, let's think of COVID and the pandemic. Have you found yourself maybe washing your hands too often? Of course, we need to follow the guideline, but have you noticed that you are doing that over and over and over again? So there might be some conflict within you that is actually getting you to do that. So trying to analyze and trying to notice what you're doing. From a cognitive perspective, notice your thoughts. Are they negative? Are you saying to yourself any specific things, any negative things? Is there a pattern? Are you repeating those negative thoughts to yourself? Try to modify them if they get too big. How can you modify it? It's about modifying your thoughts, modifying your language in a way. Try to find the confidence in fighting some of those worrying blocks. I give you an example. We are in a lockdown at the moment. Of course, we're not exposed to a lot of social situation. That becomes an unknown experience again when we, finally restrictions are lifted, we go out and we worry about it. Absolutely, that's normal. Something that you haven't experienced for the last 4 weeks now. So don't be, concerned if you worry about it. We all find ourselves in sort of a new situation. So trying to find that confidence a little bit in exposing yourself to that. How can you expose yourself? And maybe just going for a small walk by yourself, and maybe trying to chat to a neighbor before you meet someone. Some of your friends or family face to face. If you don't find the confidence to actually do it, try to imagine that scenario. Try to lie down on your bed for a few minutes, close your eyes and try to imagine to be in that scenario and think, how did I do it before? What was it like the first time I met this person? How was it? How did I react? So trying to put yourself in that situation, probably a situation that you've been there before. Of course, from an intervention point of view, there is a combination of therapy and medicine, and that's something that some people might decide to go that direction. So when we look at a cognitive intervention, we thinking often, or we can, apply cognitive behavioral therapy. So you probably heard of CBT. So what we'll be looking at is look at the situation. So you can look at these elements yourself. Okay, look at the situation you're in. Is something happening? What is the thought that is going through my mind? How am I interpreting it? Do I experience any emotion? So that emotion occurs in result to your thought, your negative thoughts, perhaps. Am I behaving in a way as a consequence of that? What's my reaction to that? So notice all these things, and this is the first step to managing it. I know people asking it, but what can I do? What can I do? The first step is actually noticing all these things one at a time. Let's go through an example in more detail. So just take a minute and think of a situation that you feared in the last week. What do you experience? So let's take the example again that you're going to meet a restriction are lifted, you're going to meet a friend, or even if they're not lifted, you decide I'd like to meet that friend. So if you look at this scale, it's asking you to rate the situation from the least feared situation to the most feared. Okay, you might have a list of situations that you want to rate and you want to decide which one is the one I fear the most, which one is the one I want to work on, which one is the one I want to tackle. But you might decide then, okay, it's the one of meeting my friend. How can you break down that situation? So there are different elements that you need to look at. So when you decide to meet the friend, you need to get in contact with that friend. You need to get changed. Something that perhaps nowadays working from home, we haven't been doing it regularly. And I always encourage people, to even if they work from home, from their desk, trying to get changed, try to put on makeup sometimes. It can make you feel better. But let's look at the different situations here. So you're gonna meet the friend, you have to schedule a time, you have to get changed, you have to walk down the road to get there. Perhaps you get to have take public transport to get there, and you have to meet your friend. You might have other concerns there, but there are certainly different steps. So which is the element that I'm fearing the most? You might say to me, I'm not actually fearing meeting that friend. I'm fearing more about the public transport, about getting from my house to my friend. That's fine. So try to rate them. How would you rate? So would you rate that 70% out of 100? Okay, so that's the top of your list. So what do you experience? So let's tackle first that situation, because that's the one that you feel like it's going to be the most difficult one. What do you think you're going to experience? You're going to experience frustration, tension, headache, anger. What do you think you're going to experience? Is there an emotion that you experience? So you can think of the last time that happened to you. What did you experience? Was there a lot of tension? Was that anger towards something in particular, perhaps the restrictions that make you feel this way? There could be different reason for everyone. Is any emotion then that you're feeling? Is any physical symptoms? Are you feeling anything in your belly? You can try to rate those as well, if you like, on a scale from 0 to 100%, and that can be more precise. You can do it from 0 to 10, but at 0 to 100 you can be more precise about each item. So this is something you can do, but the key point is you want to change something, you need to break it down into little steps. See what you fear the most, to see what you need to tackle first. How can you do it? notice all those feelings and thoughts. Let's go through another example. So uncertainty. What's uncertainty? Oh, we've been living it in uncertainty now for a year. So the first lockdown in March, we didn't know how long we would have been in the house. Could have been a week, could be 4. Now, you know, when is this going to be over? We still feel the uncertainty about it. But we can feel uncertainty about simple things happening in our life, daily things happening in our life. So am I tolerating the uncertainty? Things that are happening around me that I don't have control about. Most of the time we don't. We want control over things. And we don't want control over our worries. But a lot of things might be out of our control. So let's think again, going back to what I was mentioning before, that, you know, when we talk about worry, we talk about something that we feed ourselves, we feed our thoughts, we feed our negative thinking. So distinguish between a real problem, a real worry, an hypothetical worry. So what's a real worry? A real worry is something that it's actually happening right now. It's affecting me right now. There's an example there in the little first cloud. My children are off to school and I need help looking after them. I don't have food in the house. Okay, it's something that I need straight away. It's a problem that I need to resolve straight away. I need to look after my children. I need to bring them to school. I need food in the house because there's no food. So I need to do something about it. But most of the time we think about things that actually don't exist, that it might happen in the future. So everything that we think that is in the future is an hypothetical worry. It's something that we feed ourselves to our mind. So see the example there in the third cloud. What will I do if I lose my job and I end up without money? I'm young and healthy, but what if I end up on a ventilator? Okay, are you without a job now? Are you on a ventilator right now? Are you having COVID? So ask yourself, is something that's happening right now? If it's not, it's negative thinking. It's something that you're thinking about the future that it's not relevant to think about this right now. How do you recognize it? Some people tell me, yeah, but I can't recognize them. So you have to notice. One thing to notice is, first of all, your language, your communication with yourself. Notice in those two, the last two clouds there, those two examples, they're using what if. Every time we find ourselves asking something like, what if a conditional, it's something that is not happening right now, it's something that it might happen. So that gives you a clue, okay? What we said earlier, everything that is unknown. So everything that we say, if it happens, we're not sure it's gonna happen. We don't know if it's gonna happen. It creates automatically a response, a worry response and even a fear response. Let's have a look at another example. There's a message on the psychology tools there, and thinking ahead can be helpful. However, worrying is a way of thinking ahead. Have a look at that chain there, the worry chain. So I have a headache. What if it is coronavirus? Maybe I pass it on to everyone at work today. Everyone will pass it on and die. Imagine if I'll be losing everyone I love. Okay, so it's one thought and then another thought and then another thought, and they're just multiplying. So your worries there are just multiplying, and they're all looking in the future. There's nothing that is there that is, you know, saying it's happening right now. So reflect on you know, on the way you're saying it to yourself, and the amount of possibilities. So it's like those worries are multiplying, and you do multiply, and our head is very good in doing that, and most of the time they are negative. So how can you stop that chain, that, you know, those thoughts from going on and on in a loop? um you probably found yourself in that situation before, and I always like to get people to reflect. Did that happen to you before? What situation were you in? How did you get out of that situation? How did you get out of that loop of thinking? What helped you to control that worry when you did it? I'm sure that at some stage in your life you managed to do it. So it's so important to reflect on what worked for you before. And that can help you to create your toolbox. Some tools that you can actually, you know, take out, put in practice again, and you might add some new ones. Some people might say to me, you know, simply, I turn on the kettle. Hearing the running water can help me distract myself from my thoughts. I turn on, I light a candle, I turn on music. There are a lot of things, you know, going out for a walk. Exercise is very important. But there are a lot of things. You need to find what works for yourself. Your toolbox is your own personal toolbox. So just looking at other ways of managing it, what other intervention you could have. So we've been talking a little bit about behavior. What things can I do to get away from my feelings, so from my thoughts? You can't fully get away. That's how our mind works, right? So we need to accept them. I have that feeling. What can I do about it? How can I distract myself? So there are a lot of behavioral interventions that you can work with, you know, a therapist, but you can also find them yourself. Relaxations exercises, grounding exercises. There are a lot available online. There are a lot of videos available online. You can download them and you can watch them. You can follow them online. You can, you know, you can join a group of people doing it, but certainly that can help you relax and building up healthy habits and resources. You probably already have a lot of healthy habits and resources. You haven't been using them. You haven't been practicing them. Yes, there is always something new that you can add to your list. But think about what worked before, what worked in the past. What were your healthy habits before? What am I not doing now during the lockdown that I was doing before? Is my diet the same? Is my sleep pattern the same? Am I getting up at the same time every day? Look at those healthy habits that you had before. Exposing yourself to worrying situation. Yes, we mentioned that before. That's one way of, you know, of fighting those blocks, to becoming confident, exposing yourself little by little. To, for example, you know, going outside, going again shopping in, you know, in a big shopping center where there are a lot of people around you, in a social environment. Other type of intervention, mindful meditation. Again, you can find lots of videos online. Self-compassion practices. Be gentle with yourself. Be kind with yourself. There are a lot of exercises that you can find online. There are some links as well that you can find at the bottom of my screenshot of my examples. Gratitude journals are very useful. Emotion focused therapy, yes, that can be useful because fear, worries, anxiety, they're all emotions. So a therapy that look at them dealing with emotions can be helpful. Some people decide that, you know, they might need medicines and medication to help going through the exposure or going through certain times, and that's okay. This is an exercise from a behavioral point of view. Again, it's an exercise that asks you to look at your week, have a schedule, have a routine. So what really helps us getting out of that anxiety, worrying about going to work, worrying about using the technology to log in the morning from your home, and having to face all those meetings online. Just think of what your routine could be, what your ideal routine would be. Routine help us a lot to deal with anxiety. You don't have to be very specific. This is very general: morning, afternoon, evening. Some people tell me, I don't know where to start. I don't know what to do. So what you're doing, look at what you're doing right now. That's a good start. And then you can feed, you can change it slightly. You think, well, that's not really working, but draft what you're doing right now, and then you can change and you can add new things to it. Another exercise here, and I'm not going to go through this one in details because my colleague James covered it very well in the last webinar, and I encourage you to have a look at the video in this exercise in particular, where he asks you to take your time, look around your room, look around the environment, see what, you know, for example, here they ask you, what are the 5 things that you can see, things that you can feel, things that you can hear, things that you can smell, things you can taste. It's a very useful exercise to do, and that's because it's engaging your senses. So it's sort of slowing down your emotional part of the brain. Engaging other senses is what can distract you as well. So I leave you watch our video from last week on how to deal with you know, well-being in this time of pandemic. But let's together, before we go on to Q&As, let's do this exercise together. Some people might decide just to read through these questions. Some people might decide to have a little bit of relaxation with me right now. So decide what's most suitable for you. The technique is called stopped. It can be used in different situations with different emotions. And that's why it's overall is quite useful. Again, I mentioned the link at the very bottom of it to Get Self-Help. It's a website where you can find a lot of exercises in all different areas, and you might, you know, look at those by yourself. But let's do this one today. So just sit yourself comfortable on your chair. You're probably at home right now. Make yourself comfortable. Put your feet on the ground. Make sure your arms, your legs are not crossed. And just take a few moments to reflect about last week or the last few weeks. Close your eyes if you wish. What is it? What is the situation that you fear, that you worried about in the last few weeks? Take a minute to think about the specific situation. What is your mind telling you to do? Your mind is probably telling you to act, don't act. What thoughts are going through your mind? So you probably felt to act in some way or react. So remind yourself not to act immediately and just pause. Take a breath. Notice your breath as you breathe in and out. Again, observe your thoughts. What is your mind telling to yourself? What are you feeling? What is your attention? What are you focusing on? Could you use a metaphor to describe that? Does it feel like, or does it look like a mountain, a tunnel? Just try to pull back from the situation for a moment. Let's try to put it into perspective. Try to observe the situation as an outsider observer. Is there another way of looking at it? What would someone else see or make of it? What advice would I give to someone else in that situation? How important is it right now? Is it a real worry? Is it happening right now? Go back on the way you are dealing with the situation, or you wanted to deal with the situation. Think about those thoughts that you had earlier. Does it make sense to react in that way? Will it be effective? Is it in line with my values? What is the best thing to do for me right now? Again, feel your feet on the ground. Try to move gently your toes. Open and close your hands. Shake a little bit your shoulders. And if you were having your eyes closed, just please open them again. So I hope nobody's gonna sleep now. And I hope that the exercise and example given were useful. So let's leave time now for any questions that you might have.
So we've had some great questions in, and I'm just going to kick off with the first one from Pauline. She's wondering if there are any techniques that you can suggest to help her manage her own fears and worries, especially around COVID, when she's talking to her children about it. they are worried too, obviously, and she wants to be able to reassure them and doesn't want to transfer any of her own worries to them around it. So have you any suggestions you can make in that regard?
Very, very good question, Pauline. Of course, when we think of emotion and worries, we transmit those emotions to people around us in the same way that other people, transmit them to us. So the important thing is that you feel okay with yourself. The more you try to relax and to manage your own worries at the same time, you will be managing what you project to other people and to your children, for example. I don't know what age your children are, so it can be a bit different, but certainly, making them aware that it's something that we can't control. There is no actual threat for them now. What I was talking about is earlier that, reminding them you're not having coronavirus at the moment, you're not sick, you're fine, and reminding them of what the actual worry is, what the actual situation, what the present situation is. And in fact, you probably all well, your children are well, and if you notice that they wash their hands too much, for example, trying to say, that's fine to wash them, once or within the guidelines given by the HSE. So the more you can manage your own worries, the better you can actually, express that to your children.
That's great, Annalisa. Thanks a million for that. We have another question now from Nick. Nick is wondering, have you noticed an increase in clients presenting with destructive, addictive behaviours as a way of coping with their stress during this COVID period?
Yes, absolutely. And it's something that I mentioned before when I gave you the example of, the impulsivity of perhaps cleaning your hands, finding yourself cleaning your hands, cleaning products over and over again. So yes, there is that element, and that is brought up by the anxiety. So when we work, for example, with people with OCD, for example, we definitely look at anxiety because it's something that triggers it. So what are those behaviors? They are a way of finding comfort. Okay, so I wash my hand over and over again, or I clean the door handle several times because maybe the postman came along or someone else, a family member to the house. And I do that, start doing that a little bit compulsively. It's a way of, comforting yourself. So how else can you comfort yourself? What else can you find? What other things help you to relax, to get rid of that anxiety, that worry that you're experiencing?
That's terrific, Annalisa. Thank you for that. We have a couple more questions here. Do you believe that the current COVID-19 situation amplifies the problems we had before the pandemic started, and that this is the real reason why we're experiencing so much anxiety and depression at the moment? Or do you think that the problem is only in the present? So I'll be very interested to get your thoughts on that.
Very good question. Is it just in the present? No, I think it's certainly amplified. So I mean, we find ourselves, in a situation that is different from our normal routine, from our normal daily life, things that we do. So certainly if someone find themselves not having too many friends, or limited or restricted social circle in the pandemic now, that is just, you know, aggravated social circle. Obviously you are restricted to home or to your areas. It becomes more difficult. So those symptoms of you know, loneliness can be present even for people who never experienced it before. So it's totally normal, you know, if you find yourself experiencing some of those symptoms, you know, just remind yourself that it's temporary, that, you know, the restriction are having an impact on every one of us. um, and for those people that were already experiencing some of those symptoms, it becomes worse. um, so yes, you know, I agree that you know, the pandemic is aggravating those symptoms.
Annalisa, thank you for that. We've one final question now before we finish up. So this is from somebody wondering, is there research available or is there merit in prescribing physical activity, specifically outdoor physical activity? And this person finds that the sensory stimulation and the exercise that they get helps them to think more clearly. So very interested to get your views on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not surprised that it's helping you. You know, it's definitely exercise. Any type of, you know, sport or exercise is stimulating your brain, and you know, is helping you um, managing your breathing, which is a very important thing. You know, when we worry about things, so think about the situation where that you actually really fear. There's a tiger approaching you, okay? You start panicking, but when you panic, and you know, you don't breathe properly. So the breathing is very important, and you get that through exercise. So you practice that through exercise. So there is no point practicing breathing, for example. I always say that, you know, to people, when you in the situation, when you're in the middle of the fearing, the fear, and that situation, in that fearing situation, you need to practice it in advance. And the best way to practice it is exercise. We spend a lot more time at home. We don't walk from A to Z, from home to work. So it helps you, you know, stimulate your the blood pressure, you know, the flow going through your body, so that they all things that can, you know, can help. So whatever type of exercise, it was just while I was talking, I was thinking, you know, you might ask what type of exercise I need to do. Anything can help, and you know, it can be okay. You can go. You mentioned about going outside for a run. Absolutely, that's, you know, that's the best you can do. But even just doing some stretching at home. If you're not a runner or you're not a sport person, you know, just simply try to stretch your body. Perhaps you're working, you're at the desk, working in front of your computer for many hours. Try every hour, you know, or every couple of hours at the most, to you know, stand up, stretch. You feel any tension? We normally feel tension, you know, in the neck, in the shoulders. You could feel tension in your belly if you crunch up, you know. Remind yourself of the positioning that you are having, you know, at home when you're working. Um, and do a bit of stretching, you know, can also help you. Can help the circulation in your body, can help your you know, your breathing. Posture is very important. So yes, absolutely, I really encourage, you know, to introduce in your schedule any type of physical activities.
That's terrific, Annalisa. Thank you so much for that. And thank you as well. So Nick has come back to say thanks for a great presentation, and that hopefully we're through the worst of this now. And I think so say all of us. It has certainly been a very challenging time for most citizens in this country at the moment. But hopefully this little series of webinars is going some small way to helping people to deal with the challenges presented by COVID. So before bidding you farewell for today, first and foremost, I'd like to sincerely thank Annalisa for a fantastic job. And as I say, the video of that will be available in the next couple of days, probably before the weekend, if anybody wants to go onto our YouTube channel on mymind.org. We have another in our series of webinars this day week, again at the same time, 11 a.m. on Thursday, the 3rd of December, when our colleague Vincent Ryan is going to talk about the challenges of dealing with loneliness and isolation, which has been a common theme throughout COVID-19, sadly, for a lot of people. And hopefully some of you will be able to tune into that. I expect that that event will be live on Eventbrite later on today. So again, just sincere thanks to everybody involved, and thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules today to join us for this webinar. And hopefully you all enjoyed it and got something out of it. And please do feel free, if you did enjoy it, to let your colleagues and friends know that we'll be here again this day next week. And until then, stay safe and look after each other. Thank you very much indeed from my mind.